let's get started. It's 11 here in California. So welcome everyone to our first public developer Q&A in a stage channel. My name is Ian. I'm the engineering lead on the Bots and API team, and I'm joined here by my friend Mason, the product manager for the team, who many of you know because he has been working on Bots and API at Discord for many years. So today, the subject of our discussion is the message intent announcement. And obviously, we received a ton of community feedback on this. We've been following closely in the discussion on this server, as well as the survey responses that you submitted. And I just want to say we appreciate the variety of the viewpoints that you all have. I definitely want to acknowledge that this change is clearly disruptive to many of you. You've all put a lot of time, energy, effort into your bots, and you're very invested in the bot ecosystem. Um, and this is something that we've put a great deal of thought and time into as well. We're trying to make this change with a deep understanding of the trade-offs involved. So why is this change happening? We want to build an ecosystem on Discord in which every user and server owner can find a bot that is perfect for them. And in order to get there, we need to make it as easy as possible for users to discover and safely use bots. We need to make it really easy for devs to build and innovate within a framework that is easy to use, respectful of our users, and mitigates the scope of damage that can be done by bad actors, meaning bad bots or hacked bots. Um, and at the same time, Discord has grown immensely from its earlier days, especially in the past year. And we have millions and millions of users that are brand new and basically unfamiliar with what the bot ecosystem has to offer. And our long-term goal here is to create a place that includes the many users who are not currently using bots. In order to do that, we need to grow our user base and our support applications. We need to work together to find a way to ensure user privacy, prevent bots from doing harmful things, and to place checks on people and actors that abuse our users' trust. And the solution that we've identified here is to introduce a privileged intent that will grant bots the ability to read content in messages as well as embeds, attachments, and components. So like other privileged intents, this will kick in when your bot reaches 100 servers. You'll have to go through a verification process to share a use case and get the intent on your bot. And you can read all about this in the announcements channel. Um, there's a Help Center article. There's also now a GitHub discussion. I recommend going through it to make sure you understand the change in detail. And then the last thing I'll say here is that everyone in the audience is a developer. Every Discord staff in this channel right now, and that you'll hear from today, is a developer as well. So I want to ask us to keep the conversation constructive so that we can move forward in the best way possible, and make sure that we're doing great things for Discord and the API. So here's how today is going to work. You've all submitted a bunch of questions in Slido. We already probably have too many questions to cover, but we're going to get through as many of them as we can. You'll be able to keep submitting for probably the next couple of minutes, but we're going to close down submissions soon because we can't really keep up with all of them. But you'll still be able to use the Slido link to upvote questions that you want to see answered. I encourage you to do that so that we don't wind up going through questions in chronological order. If you want to access the Slido, it's pinned on top of the Stage Discuss channel, which hopefully you're all in and following along. So yeah, I guess without further ado, I want to give Mason the floor. Again, he's our product manager, and he's going to field a lot of these questions, and I'm just going to serve them up to him by looking at the Slido. Mason,
Yeah,
do you have anything to add before we get started?
yeah, just very quickly before we get started, thank you all again for attending. We know that it is not 11 a.m. for everybody in the world, so thank you for those of you that are making time in your perhaps otherwise off-hour schedules to come attend this. And I also just want to say a special thank you. We know that there are a lot of international developers on our platform and developers for whom English is not their first language. So thank you very much for engaging with us. And I'm sorry that all we is an English Q&A right now. We wanted to make sure that the Help Center article in the FAQ was translated into the languages that we support, and we do have some long-term plans to support more languages and things like our documentation as well. If the Help Center article is not in your native language, please do let us know. We'd love to know what more languages we can support for developers for whom English may not be their first language, because we know that meeting you where you're at and making this change and this transition as easy as possible for you can only be helped if we can give you this information in your native languages. So thank you. Without further ado, yeah, if you want to just serve him up, let's make it happen.
All right, Mason, I got a question for you.
Let's do it.
The top voted question is, will DMs sent to bots have full message content?
Yes, this is a question that we've seen a lot in the discussions over the past week. To be transparent, we are still discussing it. I do also want to say that regardless of the decision, we're actively thinking about ways that users and bots can have private conversations without having to leave the context of a server, especially without having to worry about whether the person that you're trying to talk to has DMs turned on or not. I know that I've had a lot of personal frustrations when trying to interact with a bot, and now I'm flipping back and forth between DMs and servers, or maybe I have DMs turned off for that server and things seem broken. Bots can already do this on their side with ephemeral messages, so the next step is, how do we make users able to do something like this?
Cool. Thank you, Mason. Next question is, and I'm just going to quote it. Do you realize that your decision kills a lot of bots that don't have a large budget / team behind them? I'm the only responsible person for a bot with a large code base, years of work, and migrating means rewriting everything impossible in some months. How do you plan to prevent this and help people like me?
Thank you for sharing this, Fab. I'm very sorry that this decision is causing you stress. We very much recognize that large bots with teams of multiple developers are the anomaly on our platform, and we're super glad that they are part of our platform, but we know that most of you are, you know, single developer teams trying to make something that your users love. This is a big change, and we recognize that. Reminder that we have at least 9 months until any changes are required, April of next year. Most of our popular libraries have either finished integrating commands and interactions or are quite close or have forks that support them. Hopefully that removes a big blocker from you and others in your situation. If there are specific issues that you have migrating that are independent and specific to your bot and your implementation, please do respond to the survey from in the announcement post and tell us if you haven't already. We are reading all of those responses. We're also going to be hosting more recurring events in this server like more Q&As in office hours to answer specific questions from individual developers about their specific use cases. And my last plug is, if there's something in the documentation that seems confusing or inconsistent or that you think might be helpful to others, feel free to make pull requests against our documentation. It is open source on GitHub. The repo is discord/discord API docs with hyphens in between those. We very much welcome improvements there.
Cool. Thank you, Mason. Thank you, Fab. Next question. Oh, so just a heads up, questions are closed right now, but you can still vote, I'm pretty sure.
I think at the top it
says
says that voting's closed. I don't know if we can swap that or if those are tied to the same thing, but we'll look into it as we answer questions here.
all right, we have our best people working on this problem. Well, okay, so the next question is, what use cases will be valid?
Yes. This is definitely the biggest question and one that we do not take lightly, which is why we are not talking specifics yet. I know that that feels very frustrating, but we know that there are a lot of questions about what is okay, what is not. The language in the announcement specifically talks about unique and compelling use cases that cannot be replicated by slash commands and interactions. So I think if you put yourself in that mindset, that should give you some initial answers. But we will be publishing a pretty comprehensive policy with some examples before the approval process goes live to answer your specific questions.
Okay, thank you, Anonymous. More details to come. The next question is from Felix. What is your ideal goal with adding intents? Are there any plans to add intents for more things?
This is a really good question, and I want to make the distinction between gateway intents and privileged intents here. We have a lot of gateway intents, including things like guild voice states and reactions. A few of those intents are privileged, like presence data, guild members, and moving forward messages. The intent system has two goals. So first, let's talk about privileged intents. As we stated in the FAQ for message content and last year, I believe it was last year when we did presence and guild members, the intent of privileged intents, no pun intended, is to put some information in our API that we deem inherently sensitive at scale behind an approval process that's more than just a server admin granting a permission on behalf of everybody in their server. We believe that presence data, guild member information, and message content are at that level. There are no current plans to add any more privileged intents. Like I said, there are a lot of intents that are not privileged. They do not require approval. The gateway intent system as a whole is a great way to unsubscribe from gateway events that your bot doesn't need to function, directly saving you processing power and money. We will probably add more non-privileged intents as we make more gateway events to help you filter what information you need and don't need. I know that when some of the largest bots were able to drop presence data thanks to intents, a year and a half ago, whatever it was a nearly 50% bandwidth and CPU saving for them. I know that not everybody is necessarily operating at that cost and scale, but aside from the intents that require approval, definitely take a look at what they all are in our documentation. You might be able to stop handling some events that you don't actually need and save yourself a little bit of effort.
Thank you, Mason. Next question is from Anonymous. Will bots still be able to see message content for messages they are mentioned in?
This is currently the same answer for DMs. We are still actively discussing this.
Okay. Reverse asks, do you plan to implement channel permissions to filter out certain bots for slash commands? For example, if you make a bot not able to view the channel, they can still run slash commands. Will server owners be able to filter channels?
Yes. We are currently thinking through a pretty decent improvement and revamp of the current command permission system to solve problems like this.
Cool. Yeah, and just as a heads up to folks, there is a GitHub discussion linked in the API announcements channel that has some of these things that we're planning on building. So next question from Brad Games. Will the limit be raised for slash commands because I have more than the limit currently and I only plan to add more?
There are currently no plans to allow more than 100 global and 100 guild commands, but we know that this is a common request. As a reminder, you also have access to 25 subcommand groups within each command and 25 subcommands within each group. So that's 200 commands times 25 groups times 25 subcommands. You can do the math on that one. We encourage you to explore subcommands and groups, especially after the work that we're going to be doing pretty shortly to move them into their own autocomplete within top level commands. We know that it feels a little bit cluttered right now when just everything is at the top level. And we believe that that's a pretty big mental barrier for why people aren't trying commands and trying out subcommand groups and subcommands more right now.
Cool. Yeah, those UX changes will help. Thank you, Brad Games. Anonymous says, Can you guarantee that there will be significant improvements to slash commands in the future before making a switch to entirely slash commands?
Yes. Our planned improvements to slash commands were posted in the same message as this QA link yesterday. Take a look there. We definitely know how important it is to continue enabling you all to make great stuff. So you can check that GitHub discussion to see all the stuff that we are like quite literally working on right now. And there will definitely be more stuff to come that is not directly mentioned there.
Great. It's the Mason guarantee. The next question is from George Washington. I wonder if this is the real one. Is the process of getting intents going to be improved with this new set of intents, and what steps are being taken to ensure that a massive backlog does not repeat itself?
This is an excellent question, and also one that we have seen a lot. Yes, it will be improved. We've recently finished analyzing both our intent requests and verification queues, both our current sort of steady state and the burst that has happened during announcements in the past. We've improved workflows and tooling and hired more people to make sure that we meet the need appropriately. We are also currently, I believe, back to inbox 0 on verifications, so back to that 5-day SLA. The post verification intent request is next on our list to get back into that promised SLA.
Great. Digi Duncan has a question. They are asking whether union argument types, for example, user or string, will be available in the future.
Yeah, this is also a good question. I'm sorry that I keep saying that, but they are. So union arguments are currently doable by using a string type. We also recently just shipped the change where mentions inside of a string type will get resolved. So if you have a string type, excuse me, and you type @Mason inside of it, the interaction payload should have my user object resolved in it. So that's a way that you can sort of do this. As for explicit union types, the difficulty here is more communicating to people using your bot what is valid. And what I mean by that is if there is an autocomplete of users in front of somebody, but it technically takes either a user or a string, people are going to pick users that are visible in the list because that's what they assume is going to be valid.
Yeah. Just following chat on the auto resolve behavior for strings. Yeah, this is a very recent change.
I think like last week.
Once it's fully rolled out and everything, we'll make a separate announcement for it.
Yeah. I will also say just really quickly, there are some types that we are looking to do better filtering on, like channels. Like right now, the channel type just gives you everything in a server. We are looking into, like for cases like that, allowing you to specify like, I just want voice channels, or I just want text channels, or I just want text and voice channels. Which is not really a union type, but a restriction within a type, I suppose.
Cool. Okay, we have an anonymous question. Will there be a way to localize slash commands? Having slash command names, descriptions, and arguments in only one language is hard for users who don't speak English.
Absolutely. As I stated at the top of this, I know that a lot of our development community is not English as their first language, and we know that the majority of the people who use Discord is not English as their first language either. You know, there's a lot of places in the world other than just English-speaking countries. Localization is a sort of two-step problem. There is the question of how do we show localized information to users when they type slash and sort of see like command names that are localized, descriptions that are localized. We are actively figuring out a good system to make that work. Previously, we've used things like localized dictionaries that you can register to our API for stuff like store channels. It has its pros and cons. It might just be the easiest thing. The second part of localization is responding to users in the language of their choice. Um, some of you may know if you go through OAuth, you can get user locale on the user object, which is the language that they've chosen to have their Discord client in. We have historically considered that more sensitive information than we're willing to just pass through in our API, but we are reinvestigating the possibility of doing something like that so that when a user sends you an interaction, you will know what their locale is, and if you want to, can respond in a localized way in your response message. I will say that that is a more complicated privacy question than it may appear on the surface.
Okay. Privacy. Great. So that's slash command localization. The next question is from either Dude K or Dudek. Maybe
I think it's
Dude K,
Dudek. I think it's Dudek.
Dudek. Okay. All right, Dudek. Let's see what you have to say. Will there ever be a quote unquote discovery for bots? Example, when you verify your bot will appear in a discovery system, similar to stage discovery. You could sort bots by its features, name, etc. This would probably reduce the need of a bot list to grow your bot.
You all make really incredible and awesome things. There are so many creative and useful and fun bots on our platform. Right now, our focus is on making improvements to slash commands like we've been talking about here so that this transition period goes well. But discoverability of bots is absolutely something that we know that we want to start looking into very soon.
Great. Bot discovery. Next question is from Reddy. Are there any plans to create some kind of menu where you can input text that opens when you interact with a button?
Yes, we are considering ideas for follow-up text input. It might not look exactly like a pop-up or exactly like a text box in chat, but yes, we are considering the ability to do things like this. I think it is actually listed in the GitHub discussion as well.
Great. Moving on, the next question is from Krim. What is the overall point of introducing the message intent? If someone wants to steal data or use it maliciously, I don't see how this stops them, and it barely makes it any harder.
It's difficult for me to answer your objections without knowing what they are specifically. I would say that I pretty fundamentally disagree that moving message content behind a privileged intent doesn't make it any harder to passively get message data. As for why we're doing this, we've gone into detail both here and in announcements and in the FAQ about why this is happening. So, please do read that article.
Okay. Next question is from Anonymous. If we do get access to the intent for legitimate reasons, will we still be required to transfer all our commands to slash? So far, I've only made available the most commonly used ones, but I want to know if I should get along moving the rest as well.
We do expect that people will migrate to slash commands, yes. Access to the message intent, I believe I'm quoting or at least paraphrasing what is said in the FAQ, is for powering unique, compelling use cases that cannot be replicated by commands and interactions. For example, reading messages to look for bad words. But we do expect people to migrate their text commands to slash commands and other interactions, yes.
Okay. The next question is from Anonymous. Hey, I wanted to ask what priority a date picker option is for slash commands, similar to something like the new event modal where it has date and time.
Yes. I very much want a date picker type. It is currently sort of a stretch goal for us. It's not listed in the GitHub discussion. The reason why it's not listed there is because there is a lot of other like actual blocking work to make sure that we get done first, like a better permission system and a better experience of using slash commands. But a date time picker to replace arbitrary strings and trying to parse date time, which we all know is very difficult and obnoxious, is definitely high on the list of other considerations.
Thanks, Mason. Okay, next we have a question from Mr. Cryptic X. In Discord, we review intent requests every year. For example, a bot gets access to the message intent but removes moderation features. Then the next year, the bot would lose access since it doesn't need the intent.
There are no current plans to do this. It's something that we've talked about quite a bit. It is a very heavy burden, both operationally to review these things and for you all to have to worry about every year. We know that other platforms like Apple go as far as to check every single build of your app that you upload. That's a bit much for where we're at. I don't think that we would be confident in doing this until we know that we can handle the current influx of verifications and intent requests.
Next, we have a question from Digi Duncan. Will variable length arguments, for example, a flexible amount of users in a row, be available in the future?
One of the reasons that this has not yet existed is because the way that you currently fill out slash commands makes it very difficult to do this from a UI perspective. Like how do you decide when a user is done sending you enough people? Right now, this can definitely be done with string arguments. Like you can just mention multiple people, but I agree with you. We have user arguments. It should be able to work this way. We're currently doing a lot of work to make the UX of slash commands better, and this might be something that becomes a lot easier to do once we finish that other work. It's not like I'm not currently committing to doing it, but it is one of those things, much like the date time picker, that like we know is a top frustration.
Great. Thank you, Digi Duncan, for that question. Next question is from Star Lost Dragonic. When will context menus be released to the public?
Very, very soon.
Very soon. Great.
Very, very soon.
Next question from Anonymous. I remember back in early 2020, those were simpler days. I remember back in early 2020 where a preview of the interactions were shown and there were commands inside the upload button, the plus button to the left of the chat bar. Is this still being worked on or was the idea scrapped?
We actually have an experiment live right now out on iOS that adds an entry point to slash commands in the plus button. So right now, for most of you, if you press that button on your iPhone, you will see the media picker. Some of you may see some different UI that grants you access to the slash command picker. Something like this is likely to get added to desktop as well, which is why we sort of preemptively made that change to the file upload button. But we're currently prioritizing mobile in the experiment because using slash commands, finding slash commands, that whole flow is a lot harder on smaller screens and mobile keyboards. But it's likely that this will get added to desktop.
Great. The next question is from Anonymous. Could you finally give the real reason for the message intent instead of buzzwords about privacy?
As absolutely unexciting as it is, there is no secret real reason. Uh, we posted a follow up to our announcement yesterday, or 2 days ago, that specifically answered this question. We encourage all of you to make sure you've read that, as well as the original Help Center article. We're being completely transparent here in our reasoning. There's not really a lot else that we can continue to say about this, except that we hope if you hear the words quote unquote real reason, you know that there isn't anything more that we're not saying.
Okay. Thank you, Mason, for that reasoning. The next question, also from an anonymous user, is: will you be doing another round of grandfathering for the slash command scope?
We are considering this, but only after we're sure that our new permission system affords moderators the right amount of control in keeping their servers safe and healthy. We know that when we did this last time and we didn't have the right permission system in place, a lot of moderators got very frustrated and kicked a lot of bots out of their server and then re-invited them without the command scope. We don't want to make their lives any more difficult, but we know that having to re-invite bots with the scope is annoying. And we also know that having separate scopes is kind of confusing. So I think this question will probably also come up, but we are also considering like baking the slash command scope into the bot scope. But again, we're only going to do that once we are sure that our new permission and control system like is what it needs to be to let moderators have the control that they need over slash commands.
Great. Next question is: will the limit to slash commands grow? I think we addressed this earlier.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this.
Okay. Question from Pranav: I think that we should be provided intent analysis on a hypothetical project. I would rather be assured that a planned project of mine can get an intent if needed without having to build it out and grow it to 100 servers first. Any way for developers to request a probably or probably not evaluation?
That's a really good question. Um, so we will publish policy and some examples to, help give that initial guidance. But of course, there are always going to be specifics that people are coming up with that we haven't thought of before, and that's great. Um, we try to leave a lot of flexibility in development, which is why that these changes do not affect unverified bots. We want to give you the flexibility to ideate and try new things without having to ask for everything in the world when you start making a bot, just in case. Um, but the idea of is it even worth investing the time, whether or not I'll know that this is accepted, is super valid. I think that this is ultimately something that we would love our developer support to be able to answer for people. Um, I said that the verification queue is now sort of inbox 0 under our SLA. Post verification intent requests are next. The third thing on that list is how do we make our general developer support queue better so that you can ask these types of questions. But we will also, like I said, be doing recurring events within this server, like Q&As, like office hours, like just chatting with us, where you could come where you could come ask some of those questions.
Great. Next question is from an anonymous user. A lot of bots have different prefixes currently. Slash commands replace all of those. So how do two bots with similar commands resolve which slash command is being run?
Yes. So for those of you who may not have interacted with slash commands very much yet, when you type slash, a list of all available slash commands in the server appears above your chat box, sort of sectioned off by the bots that they belong to. As you type more to try to filter down commands, you will see a list of commands that match what you've typed as well, again, as the bot that they belong to. So there really is no guessing or collision that you need to worry about on your part. You no longer have to care if other bots also have play commands. Um, when you use a command, you directly choose the bot that you're using.
Great. Next question, how will we be able to run eval commands? Slash commands only support one line.
Okay, I'm going to answer the question and then get on the soapbox for a second. One of the improvements that we are making to the slash commands experience is to make them work with multi-line input. We know that that doesn't work very well today, read at all. So multi-line input is something that we're going to be fixing. To get on a soapbox for a second, please don't make eval commands. Please. I have seen a lot of servers get accidentally nuked because people incorrectly use or allow others access to eval commands. Just think about it, please. Yeah,
Think about it.
no fingers pointed on that one.
Cool. All right, moving on from eval commands. What solution have you come up with? This is an anonymous question. What solution have you come up with to prevent server owners having to reinvite bots to grant the application.command scope?
I think we just talked about this, a possible scope migration, a second one, as well as baking the slash commands ability into the bot scope, but again, after we are very confident in our new permission system.
Cool. Thanks, Anonymous. Next question is from Matthew Vine. What about text input after a slash command is used? It's an interesting suggestion.
Yeah, so I think that this is currently on the GitHub issue of things that we're working on right now. There's sort of like the twofold part of this problem of how do we make more freeform text input in sending a slash command work better, which is something that we're hoping to sort of get quote unquote for free with the UX improvements that we're making. And then how do I get users to send me follow-up data after a button click or a slash command or a context menu is another big use case. There's a few different ways that this could go. We could make a text input component. We could make a new interaction type that allows you to pop up a modal and have a text box, or have message in the chat box be sent directly to the bot instead of to the channel. They all have their pros and cons. We haven't decided exactly what the best first thing to do is, but solving this problem, I believe, is something that we have said that we're committing to.
Awesome. It's going to be cool to see. Next question is from Promise. You've mentioned that you're working on permissions. Will we be able to lock permissions on permission, or will bots be able to create their own permission nodes? For example, use meme command or something like that. I
Yeah.
think some words got mixed up in this question.
No, I think I understand what it
Okay.
means. Permissions are a very difficult problem, and you can ask the other people on my team, as I have been agonizing for the past couple weeks about how to make a system that isn't completely insane. We haven't nailed down the specifics yet, and that is not because we're not trying. We've had like multiple quite long conversations about how to build a system that works here. There's sort of a few meta points that I'll make, which is, as developers, you're very used to interacting with Discord permission bits. Server moderators are used to working with roles. So there needs to be a way to sort of rectify those two things in a way that makes sense for your code, but translates into like logical moderation on like a server admin's side of things. That is not an easy thing to do, but it is literally something that we're doing, like we're thinking through right now. My second meta point is, a permission system needs to help moderators first and foremost. So as we think through ideas and land on something that we think is good, we will definitely be sharing thoughts with our developer community, but we will also be sharing thoughts with moderators in our moderator community, because ultimately your goal is to make sure that there are sane defaults on your commands so that they can be used safely. Moderators need to make sure that their whole server is safe and manageable. Those are not conflicting ideas. They are both equally important.
Thank you, Mason. The next question is from Monox or MonoX. The question is, when will you reopen staging?
I don't have control over opening staging.
When will you personally
When
reopen
personally
staging?
reopen staging? So historically, we've opened our staging environment to do specific testing of things. It's not really intended to be an always available free for all. It was, and I was not the one who ran the testing on staging at the time. I'm just sort of thinking back. It was intended to be a really easy way to give a bunch of people access to something to test without having to make some very convoluted experiments to allow people in. So it's not intended to be an always available come play in our staging environment thing, because we use it for staging before production. If it becomes available in the future, I have no direct control over it or not, and it would probably be for very specific reasons, not just a free for all availability.
Yeah,
There's nothing in staging that is like all that fancy, I'll say.
that's true. All right. The next question actually comes from chat, but
Sure.
Ian pinged me on it. And I have a deal with all the other Ians in the world, that I will read the question.
Yeah, that's fair.
So the question is from DY Destroyer. Will bots be marked somehow if they have the message's intent or other intents?
We will probably add some additional user education around when bots have access to things that we deem privileged. No specifics right now, because making sure that we unblock all of you to make the transition is currently a bit more important than educating users about something that hasn't happened yet. There's also a very fine line between informing people and making them scared for no reason.
Cool. Thank you for that. The next question is from Luke1412. Question is, some popular libraries didn't implement slash commands yet. For example, discord.py doesn't even have a beta of slash commands available. Can you guarantee that devs got enough time to implement slash commands after every important library implements slash commands?
I will answer this question, but I very quickly want to answer something that I saw come up in chat and I don't see on our Slido, which I think is important. Some folks were talking about custom commands. One of the things in our roadmap on the GitHub discussion is something called an autocomplete type. What that means is that it can be an option that lets you dynamically return responses from your server more than just the 25 things that you have pre-registered as options. So I see a world where custom commands could fit into that, and you basically can have infinite custom commands within a single command, if that makes sense. That might have not been a great explanation. When we finish that API, it'll be a whole lot more clear. To get back to this question, popular libraries. So we obviously do not have control over our third-party libraries. They are third-party. We try to work with them very closely to keep them informed of changes and to answer their questions about implementation and API inconsistencies and, hey, does this API suck or not? Slash commands have been in an open developer beta since December of last year. Changes are not happening until an additional 9 months from now, which will make it 1 year and 4 months / 16 months, if I know how to do math correctly, since slash commands were first released. Many libraries do have support. Some have unofficial forks. I will also say that for those Intrepid developers, they are pretty well usable without libraries, but I know that that is a much sort of bigger task to undertake. But if you haven't checked out using slash commands over HTTP and outgoing webhooks, it's pretty dope and really easily scalable. Yes,
Great.
Cloudflare workers moment. Correct, Advaith.
Next question is about forms. Do you know when forms are expected to be released? We were midway through rewriting for slash commands, then we changed it again for buttons, and now forms are being released. An ETA would be great so we could consolidate our changes. Peace and love.
I don't have an ETA for forms, but I can share a little bit about how we're thinking about it actually. Um, Forms are basically just a different visual for slash commands, right? Like at their core, they are a pre-registered set of things that a user will always see when they do some sort of specific action. One of the things that we've been considering is what if we tried to like auto create forms out of slash commands because we already know exactly what your arguments are and exactly the types that you accept. So that could be a way that forms might actually work for free. However, I also think that there is merit to being able to respond to an interaction with a dynamic form. Like somebody clicks a button and you render a form for them that may not be a pre-registered command. I don't have an ETA on that, but I do think that there are like those two separate use cases.
Okay, very interesting. Next question. Will you consider allowing bots to see their owner's message content? This ensures both privacy and helps developers.
This is genuinely the first that I am hearing of this feature request. I don't know, because this is the first that I am hearing of this feature request. I guess I would be interested to know why, other than like convenience, I guess. I would need a bit more information, so I don't know. Yeah, so they can run their eval commands.
Okay, I guess we'll have to come back to that one of these days. The next question is from MNIP, NEEP, MNAPE. What is the policy and or guidelines for granting the message content intent? How leniently are you going to judge if something cannot be replicated or otherwise implemented with interactions?
We're not going to talk about policy specifics until we have a published policy. I apologize. I know this is a question.
Okay, MNEEP, sorry about that. Next question is anonymous. If we are granted this intent, will bots be sanctioned if they use it for their own use case, but also continue to run normal non-slash commands? Or do we assume that if you're granted the intent, you're trusted with this intent and allowed to use it for additional uses? We answered a similar one of these before. I don't know if you have anything to add, Mason.
Yeah, we did answer this similarly before. Like we said before, the message intent is intended to power unique and compelling functionality that cannot be replicated by commands and interactions. So we would assume and are expecting you to move your text commands to slash commands, regardless.
Okay. Next question is, are there plans to allow slash commands to inherit bot permissions for external emojis instead of the at everyone rule? A lot of bots rely on external emojis to deliver information to their users, and this will just leave them confused when external emojis don't work, but the bot has needed permissions.
Um, this should just work, and if it doesn't, we'll take a look. Um, messages sent via slash commands actually use webhooks under the hood. And webhooks are, at least historically, have basically been granted access to just use whatever emojis they want. I don't see a reason why slash command responses shouldn't work the same way, and if this is not currently the case, we can definitely look into it.
Cool. The next question is about a specific bot. I'm not sure we're going to answer it here, but I'll read it anyway. It's from UltraX. It says, "Hey, I wanted to ask this question. How can an already verified bot get the message intent?" And there are some fun commands, such as the user phone command in the Yggdrasil bot and auto moderation. Are these actually enough to get the bot intents? I don't know. It seems specific.
Yeah, so again, I'm not going to talk about specifics of what's okay and what's not, but as far as the process goes, bots that are already, sorry, let me step back a second. When we open the approval queues for message content, the thought is that it's going to look something like this. There will be a place for bots who are already verified to apply for it if you believe that you have a unique and compelling use case. So that will be one avenue for people. And then bots that are not yet verified will just have this request baked into the verification form, much like presence and guild members already are.
Okay. DigiDuncan has another question. What is the plan for implementing or replacing command aliases?
I don't see it here, so I assume that's just something that's happening in chat. So one of the things that doesn't currently exist that we definitely want to do is fuzzy matching commands. By that I mean, if you have a now playing command, and right now you have to sort of match the exact string to get that command, it would be much better if you could do something like /np and it matches your now playing command. Sort of like how this works with like users and channels and stuff, like that fuzzy matching ability. So that's something that we want to do. Secondly, a lot of the times these aliases are for commands that people want to use very quickly. We have an experiment out on desktop right now that like is going to go to everybody eventually, to make frequently used commands. So when you open your /command picker, commands that you frequently use within that server will be at the top, sort of filtered out. So that'll be a way that you can easily access commands that you use a bunch. And also, if you start typing specifics of a command, we will filter that list by frequently used as well. So if there are 3 now playing commands in your server, and like the one at the top will be the one that you use most frequently. So minimizing the amount of typing, maximizing the amount of tabbing and entering that you can do to quickly navigate.
Cool.
Actually, I wonder if I can just I'll post a screenshot in chat. It looks pretty much exactly as you would expect it to look. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to use slash commands and not have to search through commands that you never use.
Yep.
So that's really nice. You know what else is also really nice? This next question that we have, which is not a question. It's attributed to Just Ender Boy, and it says, "Discord, I love you." Thank you.
We love you too.
Great. Okay, so we've addressed that. Thank you for the love. We addressed the second thing on this list, the question about command aliases. Okay. MNIP has another question. What happens to bots that auto-react to some keywords inside your message, not a command, to do their magic?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Look out for the policy that we will publish, I think is the most that I want to sort of say right now. And I don't mean that in a doomsday way. Sorry.
Cool. Next question is, will there be aliases to options, number of options be increased? Question mark. Some of my commands work like command line arguments, 30 options right now. I allow both full form and short form options. A lot of people prefer short form to save time, but it's not a thing. That's the question. This is pretty related to the aliases discussion that we just had, but it's about options specifically and large number of options.
So let me show something very quickly. Yeah, why not? Yes, navigating options right now is not super great. There are plans to make navigating options a whole lot better. There are two things that you're going to see in this screenshot. Eh. Auto-completing options is definitely something that would make using this a whole lot better. Number of options, I don't know of anybody, like, the use case to have more than 25 is a lot. If there are a lot of folks that are having this problem, like, please continue to give us feedback in that form. And specifics are always helpful.
Great. Okay, we're coming up on time. We probably have time for like one or two more questions. Did we talk about custom prefixes already? Or if not, the question is, will you approve requests for meshes content for bots that want to continue? Oh, well, I don't know. We kind of talked about this. That want to continue using custom prefix instead of slash commands.
Look out for the policy, but also no.
Okay.
Right, there's a question. There's a quick question in chat about regexes, which I think the question is like, how do we, like, can we filter strings based on regexes? The thing that we're looking to do to filter channel types could possibly be used for regex on strings. The question is not necessarily the difficulty of doing it, it is the safety in doing it because regex is very powerful.
Great. Okay. Let's do one more question. I think this is a decent question. Why add a new global reaching intent? Why not let guild owners assign intents to bots themselves and let them take control of privacy instead of requiring bot devs to make decisions for everyone?
Like presence data and like guild member data, there are certain things that we believe are inherently more sensitive at scale to have sort of unfettered access to. The current permission model of bots and apps is that a server owner gets to agree on behalf of everybody in their server that it is okay for this thing to have this information. That is a good model 99% of the time. If you required every individual person in the server to say, yes, this bot can do X or Y, that would be pretty terrible, like, to put it mildly. And also rife for abuse of like, hey, I'm somebody who just says that this bot cannot read my messages and therefore I get to opt out of your moderation capability. Like, that's not great. So if we sort of have this model where server owners get to agree on behalf of everybody, and we want to keep that model, but we do think that there are things that are inherently a bit more sensitive that maybe a single person shouldn't be able to just agree for everybody, we want to put those things behind a little bit more of an approval process, a little bit more of a thinking about, is this something that like is good, and not possibly harmful. I will also say, not to like put anybody on blast, as many as there are people who have legitimate use cases for getting access to these privileged intents, there are a lot of folks that don't actually understand if they need this stuff to do what they're doing. And I don't mean just like moving from text commands to slash commands. I mean like not actually understanding that the data that they're trying to access through a model can be done without presence data in like slightly different ways. So that is why we sort of have that approval process in place, because we think that it needs to be in an approval process. And there are some people like making bots on Discord is super easy, and that's great, and we don't want to change that. But it also means that people don't always understand the implications of what they have access to and other ways to do it.
Okay, thanks. I think we can end on that. We are at the 1 hour mark now. Um, I want to say thanks everyone for doing this and kind of engaging in this session, submitting all the questions. Um, I had a lot of fun. I can tell from Mason's voice that he had fun too.
I did.
Um,
I like talking to you all.
we're we're gonna keep trying to do this stuff and communicating, especially around the message intent. I know that there are a lot of questions that are still remaining on this list. We'll do our best to address a lot of them and give you all clarity as we figure out how to move forward over the next 9 months.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say, Mason?
Apparently, people want to know what microphone I use. It's a Blue Yeti. I've had it for a long time. It's real nice. Highly recommend. Make sure to get a boom arm for it, because like otherwise all of the tactile feedback of hitting your keyboard will get picked up and reverberated through the microphone, and that's no good. Yes, Ian, that's what you're doing wrong.
Damn. Okay.
And that both Ians, that's what you're doing wrong. Yikes. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.